shadow knows.
Greetings, agents of the shadow. I'm magnificent Matt Jowett, and I'm joined by jazzy Jeremy Jones.
Hello.
And cranky Ken Decay.
Hello.
How you fellas doing?
Good. It doesn't feel like Halloween, that's for sure. It doesn't feel at all like Halloween with COVID and stuff.
It's a little weird.
Definitely. We're recording this on October 27th, 2020, just to put a little...
When you guys
Contact.
get it, it will be Halloween night. When demons roam the land.
Yeah, it's weird. Jeremy, are you taking the kids out? Have you decided yet what you're going to do?
No, like we've got this weird thing on our road where like everybody has like pre-bagged things of candy and like it's not really trick-or-treating, but at least the kids can kind of like go around to the different houses and see decorations and pick up a bag of candy.
Yeah, I don't know what we're going to do yet either. It's bizarre.
If kids show up at our door, we'll probably shotgun some candy at them from the window, from a safe distance.
Yeah. My son was pretty broken up. He's only 6, but he was like heartbroken that he might not really be able to go trick-or-treating. I was like, we could watch Ghostbusters again. And he immediately just started like jumping up and down. I was like,
2 in the box, ready to go. We be fast and they be slow.
Nice. That was good. Here's the one I like is when he's like, my baby, and a baby goes down the street. You remember that iconic scene?
yeah.
You guys fucking suck. All right. What have you guys been doing? Anything? Have you done anything hobby related? Have you done anything, comics related? Wow, don't everyone shout at once.
I'm thinking hard here right now.
I haven't read anything new, but I will say, like, comic adjacent. I watched that Harley Quinn animated show, and I actually kind of loved it.
I've heard it's great. I haven't watched it, but I hear it's really good.
Color me confused.
It was surprisingly good. It was basically, it felt like your old Bruce Timm animated DC stuff meets Venture Brothers. It's the best way I can describe it. Because the humor is very clearly Venture Brothers style, but with DC characters and a little bit of continuity. Over the top, plenty of swearing and violence, a lot of fun. Maybe one of my favorite Clayface interpretations.
See, I gotta be honest, like that kind of stuff, like the new MODOK animated show and stuff, I'm not too hot on. But I get why people are doing it. And I get that there's a crowd for it, so I get it.
Yeah, comic related stuff. I watched season 2 of The Boys. I loved it. I got my wife to watch The Boys. She wouldn't watch season 1, but she watched season 2 and she fell in love with it. It was a good time. I know a lot of people are saying it's not as good as season 1. I don't know. I had fun. That's all I care about. I had a good time watching it. I didn't think it was any worse or any better.
It's honestly better than the comic, I would argue.
Yes, you're 100% correct.
I think the creators would argue that also, like the writers of the comic. I don't think they, I think they know what they have in their hands. It was made for, it was better as an idea for TV than as a comic. So I think you're right.
I was going to say Garth Ennis related. I dug up, I have this graphic novel that he wrote, and I haven't read it. I bought it at a con a few years ago to get signed by him. It's titled Caliban. Have you guys heard of this?
Mm-mm.
It's his take on what the Alien prequel would be if he wrote it. I guess Alien is his favorite movie of all time, and when he heard they were coming out with a prequel, he wanted to write the script. So he sat down and he madly banged out a script. He didn't get the job, so he turned it into a comic book and called it something else. And I've tried to read it. I've probably had it for, I don't know, 5, 6, 7 years, and I've tried to read it over and over again. And because the three of us are so entwined in Alien right now with the games we're playing, I'm going to try and finally make my way through Garth Ennis's vision for an Alien prequel.
Yeah, that's fascinating. That's even just that is like an object is really interesting.
I'd be super curious to see what he would put out there.
But this is like when I watched a panel with him and he spoke about this, and it's what made me buy it afterwards. He's really passionate about it. He took this very seriously. You can tell flipping through it. Like this is not a goofy kind of humor with over the top gore and horror and things like that. Like this was his serious attempt to make a play to write the prequel for the movie.
I like all of the Alan Dean Foster novelizations.
Yeah, he had freedom with those. I actually read something recently with him where he discussed doing all of the novelizations, and they gave him quite a bit of freedom.
I like Alan Dean Foster. I read a lot of his Pippin Flinks series when I was a kid, so I always dug his stuff.
I'm flipping through this and just noticed it's autographed at the first page, 2 Matt Shears, and then just like a blob of
ketchup.
Yeah. And there was a guy next to him who I think was also involved. And it's like, do you want me to sign it? I was like, no. And I just like walked away. I just want Garth's signature. Get out of here.
No.
I had just begun collecting the physical copies of that short-lived science fiction imprint that DC did, Helix, in 1990s, late 1990s. So I know Warren Ellis worked on it, Garth Ennis worked on it, Michael Moorcock, Walt Simonson, some other people. Started picking up some issues of that, trying to get all of them. And so far, I just picked up Brain Banks and Gemini Blood, and they're both pretty interesting. Pretty good.
Speaking of sci-fi, sorry to jump back. I also started rereading Nexus, and it's blown my mind. So good.
Yeah, we started talking about that, and you're right. I must have gotten some real skunk issues because it is good.
Just self-read Nexus.
Should we talk about what we're here for tonight on this very special spooky Halloween episode?
Well, that was the episode. Talk to you guys later.
Good night, everybody. So we're doing a Shadow story. If you're not familiar with the Shadow, he's a hero from the pulp magazines and more famously radio.
The Shadow, mysterious character who aids the forces of law and order, is in reality Lamont Cranston, wealthy young man about town.
A little bit of history in the Shadow. He actually started off as the host of a radio show, almost like the Crypt Keeper, and he became more popular than the show itself. And people wrote and said, "Hey, we want to hear about the Shadow guy." So then they quickly developed a pulp and a radio show revolving around the Shadow himself.
The weed of crime bears bitter fruit.
It's like you say, the Shadow knows, and people know what that is. They might not even know who the Shadow is, but they've heard that.
His show was it was originally called The Shadow and the Boy Bandits Vegetable Jamboree. That's true.
What?
Yeah, it wasn't as popular as just The Shadow. Who knew?
But think about that. Think about Tales from the Crypt. Say that TV show from the 90s came out, and they're like, fuck it, we don't want the stories. We want the Crypt Keeper. Give us a half-hour show about the Crypt Keeper himself and wacky adventures he gets into.
We just want shitty puns.
Oh no.
But that's what the situation was. People wrote in like, we just want to hear about the narrator, the guy who appears at the beginning and end of every episode. We don't care about these detective stories he's introducing.
I would also argue with you. I would say he's much more popular because the Shadow movie. No? Alec Baldwin's?
I think that's why most people know the character now, is thanks to that movie, which has almost gained a cult following over the years. It did very poorly.
I love that goddamn movie.
I mean, I do too. It's fun.
It was obviously like riding the success of the Batman movies, but you know.
Right. But most of the movies that came out post Batman and rode that success were really good. We got the Rocketeer, like pulp movies, Rocketeer, Dick Tracy, The Shadow,
Mm-hmm.
and The Phantom. I watched The Phantom again recently. It is like a really good spin-off Indiana Jones movie.
It's super fun.
Treat Williams as a bad guy is fucking awesome.
I think it's heresy, but I have a couple friends that would argue that they like it more than the Indiana Jones movies, which is nonsense. But the fact that you can make that argument, pretty solid.
Yeah, the Shadow movie, I used to love it. It was directed by the guy that did Highlander.
Really?
It's funny, I only know that because I just recently watched Highlander and I noticed his name. It's got a bunch of people in it. Like I said, Alec Baldwin is Lamont Cranston there. And then Peter
Tim
Boyle
Curry.
as some fucking cab driver or some shit.
Yeah.
And then Tim Curry as like a slimeball capitalist.
Ian McKellen.
Yeah, Ian McKellen is like the
yeah.
low wisdom, high intelligent scientist. John Lone from Rush Hour 2, I think is Genghis Khan. I think that's who it is. I might be wrong.
Jonathan Winters has a bit part in it.
Who is he? Do you remember?
He's the commissioner, the police commissioner.
Oh, the one that he meets for dinner every night and he's always late.
We were kind of talking about pulp before this and how pulp movies have not had success in a number of years. They're just not hitting. And I thought of this in between then and now. I would argue that the last, speaking about Indiana Jones-esque movies, the last good pulp movie that performed well, and I love it, was Tintin. Did you guys watch that?
Tintin was fun.
To me, it felt like a lost Indiana Jones movie.
I would argue the best pulp movie that came out recently was Sin City, maybe.
But is that film noir? It's like a mix of film noir and pulp. It's
like a hybrid.
Yeah, I don't,
Right.
oh no, that's wrong. The best pulp movie that came out recently, the last 20 years, is The Mummy. Dude, The Mummy, the Stephen Sommers Mummy with Brendan Fraser.
I like Tintin better. I'm sorry.
What?
Personally, yeah.
I'm a sucker for spoopy monster nonsense, and I just kind of love Brendan Fraser.
He's a real gem.
He did a wild interview where he's like talking with a guy, and I can't remember who it was, but he's like shooting arrows while the guy's talking to him. He's just nonchalantly like plunking arrows like bullseyes and being like, I just really like archery.
So there's a little background on the Shadow, a little bit of talk about pulp to set the mood. for what we're doing tonight. So we read The Shadow Over Innsmouth, and this is the Shadow meets H.P. Lovecraft. That's how it's billed.
Mhm.
Innsmouth. Unfortunately, there's no Cthulhu in here. When I first read when this came out, I bought it new when it came out on Comixology. I didn't buy a physical one, but it was billed as like The Shadow meets Cthulhu, and I was like, oh man, what a pairing! That would work super well together. You've got the Shadow who delves into these mystical things, and he
Mhm.
fights like Shiwan Khan, who is an immortal, who is Genghis Khan. So there are like these things that are mixed in there. It's just not like regular crooks that he fights. He does fight these super
Mhm.
villains and these magical beings. I was like, this could work. This is cool.
Did you guys know? Do you know anything about Innsmouth? How H.P. Lovecraft based it on, like Newburyport or anything like that?
Is it in Maine? Is that where he based it?
Massachusetts. So it's based like near Rowley. Just in case people don't. Some guy goes to a small New England town. He's forced to stay in a shitty hotel. While he's trying to sleep, he's chased around by a bunch of hill folk, townsfolk. Eventually, he escapes and, to his horror, realizes that he's related to Obed Marsh, who is like a fisherman that fucks fish people. And it ends up with him happily resigned to his fate as he turns into a fishoid and is cool with living with the deep ones, who are these fishoid people. That's in it in the shortest way possible to say it.
That was that's actually a surprisingly concise description there.
But we can talk Lovecraft another day. But I will say there was actually a very good Call of Cthulhu video game that came out, Call of Cthulhu Dark Corners of the Earth, that was
For
set in
Xbox,
Innsmouth.
yeah.
Yeah, Xbox and PC, and it was so good, wasn't it? And it was in Innsmouth. You encountered those fish people and all of this, and you spent a few days there uncovering this weird setting, and you were stuck there. Also, you were a private investigator, weren't you? A detective, and you came into town looking for
Yeah.
someone missing. Fantastic, yeah. It was on Xbox. It's also on PC. You can buy it on Steam, but it doesn't work on modern computers, so don't buy it.
Because it's so spooky because of Cthulhu.
Yes, that's exactly it.
Did you guys know that H.P. Lovecraft's parents died in like mental hospitals, and people think that's his obsession with the deterioration of sanity, that it was like connected to it in some small way?
We could do a whole episode on Cthulhu.
Oh, okay.
Or on
I'll get into it.
Lovecraft.
We'll get into it. Yeah, but that's okay. I
He's
won't
not
get
the
into it.
writer of this. I think let's delve into the writing of this fine comic.
Okay.
Ron Mars is the author of this. Ron Mars is quite a prolific 90s writer, I'd say. He had his peak probably with Green Lantern in the 90s. He took over with Kyle Rayner. Did he create? Or
Yeah,
co-create
that's.
Rayner?
I was gonna say the only thing I know him for is the big GL story, which is the Parallax one.
Oh yeah, Parallax. And didn't he also do the girlfriend in the fridge, the notorious thing?
Oh, Dibney? Sue Dibney?
No. It also happened in the pages of Green Lantern with Kyle Rayner. I don't know who he was fighting at the time, but he ended up finding his girlfriend chopped up in a fridge and ended up causing a huge discourse in the early 90s.
Purple guy? I think the bad guy was a purple guy. I can't remember his name.
Purple Man?
He was a
Is
purple
that
guy.
like literally? I don't like Kyle Rayner, so I didn't read it. Oh,
What, dude? Get out of here. Kyle Rayner's great. Although he is a child. He's always written like a complete child, which sucks. Emerald Twilight is what it's called.
Yeah. It all got undone years later with the return of Hal Jordan, which was fantastic.
Hal Jordan drives around in a bus, in some space bus, as a hobo. Yeah, what a great return.
No, he was the Spectre.
Yeah, and his whole thing was that he was like a bum.
I loved the return of Hal Jordan. I'm sorry.
I don't like any of that stuff. I don't like when they bring in this like comic guy's version of like the Christian mythos where God wants, GL to like be this punishing force. I just thought it was very weird.
They're very weird. Jeremy, did you like it? Back me up here. Did you like the return of Hal Jordan?
I liked it all right. I loved all the Spectre stuff that came up before it more. I actually really liked the Spectre run around that time. I wanted Hal Jordan back. Anything short of like pure dog crap on a plate, I would have taken it.
I would be hard pressed to find a Green Lantern I don't like, and I mean that.
Mm-hmm.
I'm the same way, except for Kyle Rayner. I genuinely like every other Green Lantern in the Green Lantern Corps. They're all fascinating to me. The weird aliens and Guy Gardner and John Stewart. Like, I like
so
all of them.
Yeah, even the newer one from the GL series, the pink lady who's like a doctor whose dad's like an evil dictator. I can't remember her name.
Soranik Natu.
I haven't touched Green Lantern since Darkest Night, and I read after Rebirth. I read all of that. So I consumed all of it, even Green Lantern Corps, all the spin-off books. I was fucking obsessed. So I haven't read anything after that, and I actually want to pick up the Grant Morrison current run because it's supposed to be quite good.
Yeah, Ron Mars.
Anyways, yes.
He's known for DC, and he's done some later Witchblades. That's all I know. I don't read any of the Top Cow stuff.
Has he ever written for like children's TV shows or anything?
Because it's so bad? What do you?
Because this was a great Scooby-Doo episode.
Oh my god, I know. This was just Scooby-Doo, and the whole time I'm reading it, I was like, this is Scooby-Doo. Oh my god, this is Scooby-Doo.
Right? Like the potential here is so like you could probably do a 6-issue run and get a trade out of this if you want to. This
Mhm.
30-page or 32-page one shot is such a fucking waste and letdown. Let's get into the story because we're talking about writing.
Yeah.
It's wild too, because like it the horror is such a perfect fit for the Shadow, I feel like, just like visually. Like there's all
Mhm.
this like fog and like this old town and wharfs and creepy people, and like none of that's used to almost no effect, really.
I agree. So the story here is Lamont Cranston, aka the Shadow, and his what is Margot Lane's title? Is it just his partner? I don't know.
Yeah.
Companion, partner, I guess.
Companion. There you go. Margot Lane, who was introduced in the radio show and was later brought into the pulps because she was popular. But the pulps came first. So Margot Lane was originally not part of it. And like I said before, he was not Lamont Cranston in the pulps either. He was Kent Allard. And Lamont Cranston became one of the aliases he used. They later brought him into the pulps as another person, and he just used his wealth. But the two of them are flying back from Nova Scotia. Good Canadian shout out there. And they have some problems with their seaplane.
Sure.
So they land in Innsmouth, where they must spend the night. And it opens up with Margot Lane talking about being she had to go to the plane while old Lamont was having a nap or something, or taking a shower. She had to go back to the plane because she forgot something. How convenient. And when she was there, she saw these strange fishmen or gillmen or
These creatures from the Black
sea
Lagoon.
creatures
Mhm.
walking, yes, across the docks, and she hid, but she made a noise, and then she got knocked out. And this kindly local brings her to the inn and reunites her with Lamont Cranston, and she's not quite sure what happened. But
Yeah, Zodak Allen, yeah, or Zodak.
is that his
Allen.
name?
Yeah, he's a main character from the
Yeah.
books. He gets brought up all the time. His name is referenced all the time in like the Call of Cthulhu like Fantasy Flight games and card games and stuff.
Interesting. So he brings her back to the bar, and then he regales her with tales from the locals of how these fishmen were born of, like you mentioned earlier, Captain Obed Marsh. And they've lived here ever since, and they've bred with local women. And now there's this race of hybrid people and sea creatures that live in Innsmouth, and it's this dark secret. And they go, oh, that's scary. We don't like that. Ooh.
Yes, this
Yep.
of course is what Lovecraft finds most revolting, is interracial marriage.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a pretty thinly veiled metaphor in a lot of the stories. Like, oh, I might be related to some ancient monster. Okay, HB, a little thin there, but all right.
You could argue it's the time. You could also argue that he's just a racist. You could also argue a lot of things easily. But we're not going to talk about that.
We're not. Yeah, that's
a
not the
story
thing.
We're
for
going to
another-
talk about this fucking Scooby-Doo
So-
with guns.
Yes, exactly. Yes. Hey, oh, here's our horrible local secret. By the way, I just met you. Let me tell you this secret.
Yeah, let me tell you all about it. Let me regale you this. Here, have a drink, and I'll tell you about it. So then they
And
head
she was
to
like,
bed.
"Thank you, Shaggy."
Yeah, because he's drawn like Shaggy. But they head to bed for the night. But of course, the Shadow, he takes the streets. Lamont Cranston takes the streets, and he needs to see what's going on. And he encounters these hideous fishmen, and he says he's going to punish them for what he did. And he shoots them up on the docks, but misses all of them, and they descend into the sea conveniently.
Mhm. The expert marksman, the Shadow, misses all of them.
They're so slippery, though.
They descend to the sea. And then we cut to the next day, and there's some off-camera fight that has taken place that we're not made aware of. And Lamont Cranston's like, hey, peace out, I'm going back. And Margot Lane's like, I hate you, I'm staying here. And I was like, so is this a plot point to find out what's going on? Or is this,
Oh,
or did they actually have a fight? And they never really
It's
get
implied.
into
They
it.
don't.
No. I think it is implied at the end that she knew what was going on. It was part of like a we're in a team kind of thing. Because I thought the same thing, and then I remember rereading it and being like, "Oh no!" She gives him like at the end, she gives him like a wink, like we got him, boss. You know what I mean?
yeah. But at the time, it's just structured poorly because when I'm reading the comic, I sincerely like flipped back to be like, did I miss a page?
So he stays behind, or Margot Lane stays behind. Lamont Cranston leaves, and then the locals, Zodak Lane or whatever his name is, says, "Hey, you better not go out at night because you might not survive this time." But what does she do? She looks up at her window of the hotel or the motel she's staying in, and it cuts to night, and that window's open, and she's dashing across the docks. And what's this? They have a fucking submarine.
Talk about the most bullshit token thing to put in a 20s era comic. They're like, we're gonna put a Zeppelin in or a submarine. You only get one.
U-boat. Yeah, that's the thing. This is 20s or 30s. They have a submarine. They're actually like small time rum runners, and they have a fucking submarine.
It's ridiculous.
Yeah, that's what they're doing. They're dressing Scooby-Doo style in Deep One costumes, and
There's honest to God, like pull the mask off. Oh my Jesus!
And they're using a submarine to run alcohol, and that's it. That's booze, and that's why they're using this insanely overwrought, complicated scenario. Is because they're like, oh, because of prohibition.
That's all we get. Nothing. We get nothing.
That's the thing too about like, so these guys were in costumes. Think about costumes at the time in the 1920s or 30s
Right?
or whatever this takes place. It would not fool anyone to think that they were actual sea creatures. She easily rips it off, the mask off his face like it's paper.
Mm-hmm.
Long story short, damsel in distress. The shadow comes back. Apparently, it was all planned. I don't know. Ken thinks it's a plan. I don't know if it was. Jeremy's with me. I don't know.
Matt loves to jump on Jeremy's with me train.
Yeah,
Let Jeremy talk.
I feel like they try to imply at the end, but it feels like a lazy tie-on. Like, oh no, we didn't like completely flub our structure of storytelling here. It was intentional all along.
This does feel like it was written in a weekend.
Like the dude was typing typing away like while they were on the John. Just like they didn't care.
So the shadow shows up. This time he doesn't miss, and he hits everybody with the single shot, blows them all up, or kills them all, then blows up the warehouse, and is like, "I have a submarine to sink." Cut to next page.
Uh-huh.
It's the next day, and there's like a sub, like diagonal sticking out of the water.
Like a cartoon Titanic.
It is a cartoon. It is a cartoon. It is a Scooby-Doo episode. God, but the thing, like, then to tie it off to really make it a cartoon. Oh, hey, did you hear what happened here? And you've got the little figure at the table.
Who
No,
could that be? Tell them the payoff.
So you've got the barkeep talking to some dude sitting at a table, saying like, "Hey, did you hear that the shadow was in Innsmouth?" And then you see this like cherubic face kind of sit up. It's like, "Oh, a shadow in Innsmouth? I like that."
You just got Lovecrafted.
What a groaner of an ending.
It's amazing that he didn't just scream the N-word at the end. You know, I'm H.P. Lovecraft.
Shadow Over Innsmouth.
You don't say.
I don't feel like a crossover with like that sort of mythos should come across as cartoonish or end on a cutesy note. I feel like just kind of an all-around failure.
When I saw the cover, I was hoping Matt Dow Smith, the guy that did the cover, was doing interiors too.
I mean, I see that cover and I'm interested. I want to read it.
Yeah, me too. And then I saw that Ivan Rodriguez did it, and I was like, I've never heard of this dude. But he is also serviceable with some strong moments. When the shadow is coming out of like the fog, there's like one page spread. It's pretty good. I liked it. That's pretty good. He never really falters to the point where it took me out of the book, except that everyone's face was very weirdly round and pudgy.
That
like
was
everybody.
the first thing I
Yes.
thought of when we saw the show. When we saw Lamont Cranston, he's supposed to have a very like thin sort of face, the big hawk nose, and he just looked like a pudgy like businessman.
Agreed.
Like he had a nice little double chin going on, and like
Yeah.
he wasn't imposing. They actually made a point to show that he wasn't taller than everybody, and I was like, that's just like drawing 101. If you're gonna push up the drama, make the hero, you know, especially like a pulp hero, big, you know, taller, imposing.
I honestly went back and reread. I was like, is this supposed to be? I guess that this is the shadow, but yeah, agreed. It just looks like random. He looks like the guy who should be the sidekick to the shadow.
Did you notice that Innsmouth looks like a medieval town in France? It's half timbered
Yes.
houses and stuff.
Yes.
Even though it's supposed to be some 1900s era Massachusetts town.
I would say Margot Lane is probably the best drawn / rendered character in this whole comic.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah, she actually sort of reminded me of when Guy Davis did all of the Sandman books, like the Sandman Mystery Theater. He drew women, and maybe it's just because they all dress, you know, like flappers, or not flappers, but women from the 20s.
I mean, I dig the 2-page spread where they're kind of describing the legend. You get to see, you know, the treasure and you know the sea creatures and I assume that's Dagon in the center.
That double page spread is actually very good. I agree. I'm going through it right now. We're all reading it on Comics.
I don't know if it was
Again,
I don't know if it was good, but it was definitely serviceable and it was interesting.
good
Yeah.
compared to the rest of the book. How about that?
At that point, it was the most interesting thing to me. Like, it was almost like refreshing, which I'm not saying is great, but
But I think a lot of that's on the colorist Inlight Studios. They did a good job with like the flashbacks and stuff. I think everything else was sort of like because they had a habit of making people's faces look really ashen and pasty. Did you notice that? Like everyone
Yeah, I
had gray
did.
faces.
Yeah.
Dude, it's the Shadow. They're in Innsmouth. They should have pushed the lighting and the colors to make up for the slack on Ivan Rodriguez's art.
The one page and panel that really took me out of it, and this is interesting because we're reading the special edition or whatever on Comixology.
Mhm.
So we actually have unfinished pages in the back, and I want you to look at page 14, the bottom right hand corner, the bottom three pictures. I was like, wow, whoever inked this and colored it did not do a service. Like the pictures of the fishmen in the bottom right look unfinished. And then if you go to the supplemental material at the end, that page is there and it's identical. Like there is like it's rough pencils and they just colored it.
Because his backgrounds were the same way. There's no one doing fill-ins for him. It just was like, here is a blank space, and they just filled it with like some pattern of smoke or something.
like for half a second, I was almost an apologist for this comic, saying like, well, maybe that was drawn intentionally bad because they're costumes. Yeah, that's the ticket.
We get to when he's fighting these guys, the big fight at the warehouse, right? And he's shooting all of these people. The violence was so gruesome. Their heads were getting blown off. Blood was shooting out of the back of them. I didn't enjoy that. I thought it was weird in a pulp comic that the violence was so over the top.
But it's interesting you say that because we were going back and forth for record this, and Ken was like, "The only thing I know about the Shadow is he draws his guns and he kills everybody in a bloody massacre," and that's what you got here. So it's interesting that you do get that, and you're like, "Oh, this is off-putting."
Well, it's off-putting because you always punch the guy out, or you always, you know what I mean? Like, no one dies. Not really. And if they do, it's usually by their own hand because they're pure evil.
No, I'd say in pulp, it's you kill them. If you like your old original, like in the radio series, you would have never killed anybody. But if you read the pulps, they're damn
Yeah.
gritty. Like you shoot to kill, and you ask questions later. And that's why I was like, oh, the spiders, because the spider's really over the top. Like if you take the Shadow and like ramp them up by 10, that's the spider. It's just like, I'm gonna fucking kill you. As soon as I see you, I'm not even gonna ask or find out if you are guilty. I'm just gonna shoot you in the spot. I'm gonna murderize you right here and turn you into ground beef with my 45s. The Shadow's not that bad, but he will, like he does the investigation and then he'll just kill the guy.
Well, that's not very cash money of him.
A lot of your pulp action stuff can have plenty of guys getting shot, but I feel like the difference is you could see the man with no name shoot, 5 people down, but they all get hit and they spin and fall. Like I almost picture it like that when I think of pulp gunfire. Like, sure, the Shadow probably killed a bunch of people, but I don't see like the splatter effect necessarily, like stylistically. Like, so I can kind of see where Kent's coming from.
The art's cartoony. The
Mhm.
people are cartoony. The colorist did everything like it's an animated show, like it's very cartoony, which is also what helps make it look like Scooby-Doo. And then all of a sudden you've got the Shadow blowing people apart, and then a guy's like, oh, it's Lamont, and he just sets them on fire. And he's like, let's blow this fucking building up.
It does not suit the tone of this book. I agree 100%.
And then it just makes the earlier scenes so much more like confusing. How like did you intentionally miss everybody?
That's what I mean. It's like, so he's like, pew, pew, pew. And then like, well, Ty, we'll see you later, the Shadow. And then the next one is just him brutally murdering them.
Yeah, I agree. It's terrible. They needed to wrap it up and wrap it up fast.
Skip all this shit and watch Stuart Gordon's Dagon, the guy that did Reanimator.
That's a fun film. Like maybe fun's not quite the right word, but
You're gonna say, Kenny, that movie sucks. I've only watched 30 minutes. You're right, it does suck for the first 30 minutes, but stick through it. It gets pretty wild.
pretty solid. That's actually one of my favorite variations of kind of the Innsmouth type, mythos. Well, and like, so I think of that, and I think of like all the crazy mythos you could have the Shadow interact with. And I know, like, we chatted a little bit about this, like the whole idea of like whether or not the Shadow has like the psychic capabilities is a little different on depending upon the source you're pulling from.
As the Shadow, Cranston is gifted with hypnotic power to cloud men's minds.
But part of me almost wish that we could have had the Shadow that does kind of like slightly mentally connect with things and have it be in a place where there's this stuff that'll just drive you mad. I wanted that.
Right. That you nailed it on the head. Like this is the perfect setting for that.
But guys, rum runners.
With a fucking submarine.
And you know what? I'm not against the Shadow shooting up a bunch of Run Runners that have a submarine. That's great in a different issue.
This is a good example of someone being like, well, I'm gonna do a little twist on it. And it's like sometimes just doing it the way it's done is better than doing the twist.
I agree. It was a bait and switch. I was so excited when this was announced. I bought it. I don't know when it came out, like 7 years ago. Bought it the day it came out. Read it, and I was like, "Oh, this sucked. This is not what I was expecting at all."
Well, and for example, Matt was talking earlier about one of the things that made Shadow a little different is he had his team of people, and granted, none of them were the superstar that he was, but they each had their own skill. So wouldn't it be great to have a thing that his ability that normally makes him so special could have been his weakness, and he would have had to have relied more on his team? Hey, what an easy angle to take and satisfying.
I would have liked it more if it was the Shadow, but it was done as a manga, and they all had different colored scarves, but dressed similar, like Kamen Rider.
Please don't.
Oh my god.
That's what I would have liked more. Dude, that's what I'm gonna do for my next choice. I'm gonna make you guys read manga.
Mm.
Okay, well, COVID's going to prevent me from meeting you and kicking you in the balls, but I would still do it.
Yes.
The way it works is you guys have to read what I give you.
Speaking of which, I think we should try and read a good Shadow comic down the road as
I'm up for that.
contrast. Now, speaking of Garth Ennis, he also did a run in the Shadow, and it's atrocious. Some people love it, and some people I absolutely hate it, and I don't recommend that. Do we have anything else to add to the visuals after we just chat all over them? So our next topic is themes. I think we've touched on that. This was a cash grab. This was a got him.
Yeah.
That's all this was. We got your money.
Yeah, there's your theme. Sucker. Mm-hmm.
There's no substance here, people.
Throw it in the trash and go get Dagon. And pick up Robot Jocks while you're at it.
Oh my god, I used to rent Robot Jocks from the video store all the time.
Oh, same.
Same dude,
Yes.
man. Yeah, same guy. Yeah, he's some stinkers too, but you know, what are you gonna do? You know what? Maybe so now that I'm thinking out loud, maybe they wanted to avoid the entire. Maybe they were like, oh, we can't touch any of that stuff. Like, when was this made?
2014, and we're recording this in 2020, so it is 6 years old.
They could have just been like, we don't want to touch any of that stuff. It's kind of grimy.
I don't think so.
Oh, you're right. It's Dynamite.
Yeah, they don't,
No.
don't give a shit. This was Ron Mars getting a quick paycheck.
Can we talk about Dynamite for a second? Like, what, like, do you guys like anything Dynamite's ever made?
Some of the pulp stuff they were putting out this time was good. It was passable. And that's the only stuff I read from them. When they got the license to the Shadow and the Spider and a number of other pulp characters, I bought it. A lot of it was shit. But there was some diamonds in the rough.
I think they did. Did they do like the really ridiculous like Ash versus Jason versus Freddy stuff? They just go out there. I read that sort of stuff, and like I've read a lot of Dynamite just because it's the sort of thing that at my tabletop game at home, like, dude, I'm going to totally throw all this stuff together. And it's going to be amazing. And like a lot of their stuff just feels like me having a half-assed one shot at tabletop.
I remember someone ran a Ghostbusters game that was in Chinatown for Big Trouble Little China, and that's what it feels like. Like Army of Darkness meets Bubba Hotep meets Xena,
Mm-hmm.
and it's always really dumb. It's just lame.
What's the bar? Oh, they had The Boys. Boys is a big hit. We're talking about it at the beginning of the show.
I don't think they had it originally though. I think they picked it up when it got bad.
Oh, really?
If I remember correctly, because I was reading The Boys when it came out originally, and Dynamite picked it up around like the Soviet guy with the huge dick there. I can't remember his name. Love Sausage. I
Love
think his name
Sausage
was Love
sounds
Sausage.
right.
Yeah. They do have, so the best stuff they're putting out are reprints, like some old Shadow stuff. They've got American Flag. There's a few other things in here I'm seeing. The thing that I think ran the longest is the John Carter spinoff. What is it, Deja of Mars? That seems to be going on forever and never ends.
Yeah, Deja Thoris of Mars. Just Deja Thoris. Oh, you're right. I guess they have two titles with the same name. Okay.
That seems to always be in print. I don't know why. I don't know who buys it, but it's always out there. It's never ending. You always see it being.
It's the same dudes who buy comics that have zombie cheerleaders.
Well, it's cheesecake.
Ooh, yikes! I'm looking at it right now. Yeah, some of this is gross.
God, they even
And I mean like it's making me uncomfortable. Like I'm nervous my girlfriend will see me looking at it over my shoulder.
You know what? There is some actual good shadow stuff they put out as well. I'm looking at under their shadow tells right now. Shadow Year One was really, really, really good. They have it listed as Garth Ennis's Shadow Year One. It was actually Matt Wagner who did it, who's like amazing at this genre. And he also put out one. I have it here. And I haven't read it yet, but the reviews are supposed to be very, very good. The Death of Margot Lane, also done by Matt Wagner. So I picked up both of those.
Oh.
I've read Shadow Year One, and it was actually a really, really, really good read. It was very akin to Batman Year One because Margot Lane's like a prostitute, just like how Catwoman's a prostitute. There's a lot of parallels that he borrowed, but Matt Wagner does a very good job. It's just all properties. There's nothing original here. King's Quest was actually King's Quest was good. The Phantom, Flash Gordon, and who's the other one? It was actually really good, but short lived. It was Bittersweet.
It was the vegetable gang summertime mysteries.
That's it. Everybody like, is it Mandrake the Magician? It was really, really well written.
All right, so final thoughts.
Thoughts. Sorry, as we're going through the catalog of Dynamite here.
Yeah, this bonus episode, we go through the entire Dynamite catalog word for word.
But there is some good stuff in there because we kind of shit on it. Final thoughts?
No, it was me. I shit on it. You don't have to. I'll go down with this shit.
Well, I mean, to be fair,
I don't.
We were shitting on it because we were shitting on this comic. Speaking of final thoughts.
Yeah, final thoughts. I think in unison, just go down the line.
It's terrible. Don't even buy it on sale.
Jeremy,
if you see a friend holding it, kick them in the groin and make them stop.
Yeah, Kenny, absolutely. I'm going to refer to myself in third person. Absolutely, it's trash. Don't even touch it. Don't even look at it. Just listen to us talk about it and then pretend like you read it and tell your friends that you read it. Just lie.
Friends don't let friends read The Shadow Over Innsmouth.
I think that's a perfect end to this episode.
Do you guys have any plugs or anything like that real quick? October 30th or 31st?
No.
I'm good.
Yeah, plug the Plewdcast.
You can't plug the Plewdcast.
I'm plugging the Plewdcast on the Plewdcast. That's the only thing I want to plug. All right.
Some kid listening to it, his head warps into it sucks into his nose and creates a singularity.
Well, hey, speaking of kids listening to this, don't forget to send Plewds. You can do that on our Anchor page. Leave your questions, leave your comments, and throw in some suggestions on what you'd like us to read in the near future.
Give us nothing but Dynamite titles. Just what? Ash versus Freddy and Jason? Hell yeah.
Happy Halloween, everybody.
Happy Halloween.
Yeah, happy Halloween.
Yeah.
Be safe.
Eat too much candy.
The weed of crime bears bitter fruit. Crime does not pay. The shadow knows.
Whoa, whoa, whoa.